Welcome to Hanna-Barbera Business School, our weekly guide to the inner workings of the Roy family. I am your co-host, Zachary Shevich, and joining me, he just had to cancel on a group of working-class whites in Cleveland. It's Arturo Zurita.
It was that goes above the honeymoon clearly as we go out there. But hey, I'm excited to talk about what has been an even better episode of Succession, man. I said everything coming after the iconic episode that happened at a wedding. It's
Mhm.
just been up and up. This has been taking the name of Succession to the fullest, man. I'm fed.
Yeah, I think any sort of concerns about the health of this show without Brian Cox being that sort of like center
It's really
gravitational
good.
force around it, I've been wiped out with the quality of these past two episodes. I mean, if anything, it's almost sad to know that we are now halfway through this final season. We've only got five more episodes left with the Roy siblings. I feel like I could watch more than just those five episodes. I'm down to hang for another couple of years, but hey, I'm gonna trust Jesse Armstrong because he's done us well thus far. I really enjoyed this last episode. Again, getting sort of like back into the swing of things, doing their different dealings. But the thing that resonated with me is a quote that like maybe we should have brought up when we were doing our episode 3 recap, and it's the last thing that Logan said to his children. I love you. You are not serious people.
Yeah,
They
they're not.
they are set to go up against Matsson, who I think we could say is a bit of a serious person, given his ability to negotiate his way through this series. I don't know, man. It was we've seen the kids stumble a lot, and I think that this has been a better season for Kendall and Roman than it's been for Shiv. But it kind of flipped the tables a little
What?
bit in this
Yeah.
episode.
I was about to say, that I've been pulling for Shiv because I know she has the potential to be it. I think
Right.
this was the closest that she's gotten for it. But in terms of Matsson, yeah, they are not just unserious people. They wouldn't be able to do it without their father, much less a dude who their father couldn't even take out. So that's the problem there. This isn't just their first adversary without pops. They had to go up against the Thanos of this universe damn near because they don't stand a
Hmm.
chance against the Swede.
Yeah, he outduels them completely. Let's start this at the top though, because I know you had the same reaction I did when
Yes,
that
sir.
iconic Jay-Z music comes in and Kendall doing returning to his roots, listening to hip hop to get him pumped for a day at business. I both felt very seen and also like very attacked by their use of takeover here. I mean, of course, this is the music that Kendall is gonna choose to put him in the right mind frame for taking over Waystar Royco.
I thought this was what we've been waiting for, bro. This is Succession. We finally got the game ending and who's sitting on the throne. That strut right there is the cleanest strut we've been waiting for. I can see a 30-minute cut of this right here. He really felt it on his shoulders right there. He really thought this was it. I was all in. I loved it. Take what better song than to have Ye's drums right there? You got the vocals from Hove. This is exactly the type of intro I wanted if he were to ever have taken over. And I thought he delivered, and he had all the chutzpah here before he completely and utterly drops the ball for the second half of this episode.
Yeah, so the CE Bros, we're gonna
Oh
work on
yeah,
a better
yeah.
one there. They start running a meeting. We see Kendall and Roman in action. Kendall's been sending Roman a bunch of emails, but also one more email saying disregard all previous emails. Sounds like a very efficient way to run your operations. But then all the executives get together because there's been a change in plans. Matsson doesn't just want the co CEOs to come to Norway for their treat. He wants to see all the executives and check for cultural compatibility. It suddenly turned into not just a potential sale, but a job interview for everybody left in
Oh
Waystar
yeah, yeah.
Royco. So
A little goofy,
Frank and
no?
yeah, I mean, it's maybe a little early to kind of evaluate who you're going to hire and fire before you've even come to terms on a deal. But I mean, if it's just an excuse to get all our favorite people in a room, I'm there for it. You
Thank
know,
you,
Succession is always at its best when you can have all the characters
everybody.
in one place at once. It's not, you know, it's not like Game of Thrones where suddenly two people will go off to a distant land, or Mad Men where it's like, oh, now it's an episode where Joan and Dawn are going to go to the bar together. Like, we want Succession to be at parties, at weddings, at business meetings, at board meetings, at retreats. Like, when it's always at its best when everybody is involved.
Agreed, because it's not just like you said, really good dialogue happening over there in the distance. I like two people discussing, and you remember that moment, and the repercussions of what was said will affect another character who had no idea what was going on there. And there's no better form of that than in this episode, where I felt it was so goofy to find a way. How much is it for every single one of them to take the plane there? Like they said put the cost to the side. We just need everybody for one final hurrah in one place. They took them all to Sweden, and you end up getting some of the best moments from the side characters. Carolina had probably the best line of the week, and I don't even think she should have been there. But we all lead up to what the games were that were at play here, in inviting everybody and who was going to make it, as the title says.
Yeah, so after Frank and Carl put on their compression socks, everybody lands in Norway, and the suits the suits discuss Matsson's team. You know, Jerry is giving a pep talk. I thought this was another point we can score in Jerry's favor. How she's
Been telling
always
you.
the one with the most level head who knows how to like get people to do the things they need to. Heck, she gets stuff done. She's
That was a great moment.
totally calm and collected in this moment.
Yeah, I think it showcased why she could easily be a leader, and one of the reasons why you still see her remain after this episode. So I like seeing that.
Yeah. I'm borrowing a point from Joanna Robinson on The Ringer, but one of the beautiful things about this show is the attention to travel detail. How they take their private jet, then get off into town cars, then get off into golf carts, and then they eventually take the gondola to go up to see Matsson. Like, it's so much more rich to see that whole process and see all the mechanics of it and how much labor goes into just transporting these people around the globe than for them to just show up in Norway suddenly.
Well, that's what I'm saying. It's too much effort, too much money. It's not logistical to get everybody there, but they needed
Right?
everybody there for what was going to be the big scenes. I don't even know logistically if they still filmed here, and then the Norway sets was just the main duo, because there is that
I'm
beautiful sequence that we'll talk about. But it's like, did they
Yeah.
actually bring everybody to Norway? Because
It
Norway
sounds
was
like,
credited.
yeah, they went to Norway for 11 days for this. I mean, Succession is a
Sheesh.
show that never really pulls expenses. Like, they
Oh,
really go all out for this.
as we
HBO
heard,
has treated them well budget wise. Yeah.
they cut out Papa Logan and they said we're still going to pay you for every episode. So if I
Exactly.
got the
Still
kill
cutting the
list
checks.
notification and they said we'll take you to Sweden, though, I guess no better goodbye. But I will take that quote you were saying about the traveling to get there, not just in how funny it is that the whole group goes, but it also showcases how much. I know you said you got it from the Ringer, but how much he was putting them through the Ringer, because you get a
Right.
sequence after seeing how long it takes him to get there that he just takes a helicopter back. And there's this dope moment when they're taking the gondola and he just gets there in seconds. So it makes you think he purposefully made it as annoying to
Hmm.
get to his place just to screw with them.
Exactly. I mean,
He's conniving.
that stuff. Yeah, I mean, it's maybe a reason again why Matsson is more well suited to this than the siblings are. But it also are these things that start to really weigh on Roman, and Roman, I think, takes the center stage for a lot of this episode. We'll talk about that more later, but it also involves this phone call he gets from Connor, because Connor is back in the States on dad duty. He has canceled on those working class whites in Cleveland that we were talking about earlier. And he's battling Marcia because Marcia's trying to put Logan in a kilt for the funeral.
Damn.
Yeah. Not exactly the best way to be spending your honeymoon, but Connor ends up being liaisoning through Roman throughout this, and then ultimately sending him a picture of Logan, I think, like Logan's body at some point. So it all adds into the spiral that Roman goes through in this episode, which I thought was like a really excellent Kieran Culkin episode in what's been amounting to a really excellent Kieran Culkin season.
Oh, I agree. I
Yeah.
think this was his best performance and the worst performance. Worst
Worst
performance
in what
from
sense?
worst from Roy.
Like
As a
in
Roy in the
okay,
universe of
okay.
this world, that is the worst thing you can do as a CEO, CE, bro, owner of anything. Best performance from Culkin. He killed it there. He did
Yeah,
exactly what you're not supposed to do, and he lost his cool. So, worst performance, best performance.
I hear you. All right, so in the gondola, Kendall sets the stage that uh, they they want to get Matsson to agree to an offer above $144 per share. If they go above that, they'll end up happy. And then there's one of the more fun scenes in the show. The executives all meeting around the serious Scandi brunch. Carolina, as you mentioned, gets in some Swedish and kind of like an ice cold backhanded compliment.
Compliment,
But I
yeah.
think but it's really like Hugo who I felt like stole this scene. This has been a really excellent season for Hugo, but he had so many funny moments in the scene. I love that moment when he's like, "They tell me you nearly got bronze in Sochi. Oh man, that's almost huge. Those darn tenths of a second, huh?"
Yeah. And those darn tenths of a second did what to his? Because he's on that list. I love the part at the beginning where it's like everyone's meeting their counterparts over in
Yeah.
Sweden. You know, saw their IKEA doppelgangers. And there's that one moment where they go to the buffet, and that extra dude, the one who also gets cut, he took like an extra croissant and just like threw it on his plate, thus leaving him to get it. But both of them were gone by the end of it, so they weren't as well kept as they thought they were going to be. So
Exactly.
again, best performance, worst performance. A lot of those this time around.
uh so where were we? Oh yeah. Um there's the meeting finally, where everyone finally meets Matson. Um, but Kendall suggests that they just split off the CE Bros and Matson. And this is, as we were talking about, just one of those moments where Matson clearly is so much more comfortable, so much more well versed in negotiating in these high stakes situations. You know, he's so clear in how he feels and what he wants, and he's able to communicate it, even if there is some kind of like, you know, a little bit of manipulation and like pushing on the Roy family's buttons there. But
Mm-hmm.
he offers them $187 per share, and Kendall and Roman literally cannot respond to him. They're at a loss for words. They don't know what to say. I feel like because they don't know really what they want.
Mm-hmm. You think that was a good thing or a bad thing?
I mean, I think it shows that they're not ready for this, that they can't, go toe to toe with him, that they literally come up speechless when presented with an offer.
Does 187 per share? What does that end up coming out for the main crew specifically? Because if you're getting rid of ATN, then at that point you are fully just this man's employee, other than the stock you may have. So I
Well,
don't know if they
so
think
I
that.
think so I think the idea is uh if they were to sell at 187 per share, and this was Matson trying to buy the whole company including ATN, they wouldn't
Yeah.
be under Matson, because they would just cash out and be able to use that money to go buy Pierce, and they would have even more money than they originally thought they would, because they're also getting money from the additional, what is it, like $43 per share from the sale of ATN.
But they would no
But
longer have the parks. They would no longer
they would no
have
longer they
the
would no longer have
news.
Waystar, they would no longer have ATN, they would only have Pierce in that situation. And this kind of ends up being where we see sort of like a division between what the different siblings want in the situation, right? Because Kendall, or where is it? Yeah, because after this sort of meeting with Matson, Kendall and Roman go talk to Shiv, And Shiv hears their offer and is immediately ready to sell the whole company. She thinks Waystar and ATN are toxic assets, and she's ready to move on to Pierce or whatever they do next as a team. Roman still wants to sell to Matsson, but he wants to keep ATN. He wants to finish Dad's breakfast, as he says. Kendall, on the other hand, although he doesn't come right out and say it there, he's starting to like being the Waystar CEO. He's done a pretty good job over the past 24 hours, and maybe they should just keep the whole company in the family. So who do you think is in the right here? Whose strategy is making the most sense to you in this moment?
You know, like when someone can be right, but they're doing it for the wrong reasons. Any inkling of any of them thinking that they're doing a good job is just by happenstance. Like you said, he wants to keep CEO only because he wants to. Kendall wants to make the other person mad, and he wants to be in charge. That's not how you do business. Shiv wants to continue to prove that stint she went back on season 2 is to not do it through her daddy's past and that they could create it on her own. I think she would have done that by now if she could. And then Roman, as much as he gets his his moment to shine and talk bad about the person who's putting your dad down, like you said, you're only doing this because of the sentimental aspect of your dad wanting to keep it. You know, so it's like I don't feel any of them are making the right choice in their approach.
They
so
might even
if they
yeah
make the right choice,
they all have bad reasons for whatever choice they're
there
making.
you go. Yeah, so it's like I just don't see it coming to fruition. I am, after seeing this episode, I believe they're ending season 4 because they're gonna lose it all. That throne is being burnt by the end of it. Yeah, there's nothing else to tell. They're gonna be on the street.
I mean, if you look at like the attitude that the Succession writers have towards like the people who make the decisions in a capitalistic society, and also the incompetence of these nepo babies, like maybe that is the end game for the season of Succession. They're just gonna burn down whatever legacy they think they're thought their father would have. Yeah.
They burn money like this, right? So all that money they're going to get, what's the point of it if you don't have a company to generate more in the future? Look at y'all. Y'all took the entire cast of Succession over to Sweden. Why? They're going to burn through that money immediately, and I don't think they have another anything else generating.
Yeah, definitely. So after the siblings have their little discussion, Greg tries to cozy up to the family. Shiv says the fuck, and Tom ends up pulling up a chair next to Matsson at his table.
Terrible.
Matsson asks him if he thinks France is gonna make it. You know, birth rate, youth unemployment, sclerotic state. Will they make it or just pull a Greece? He asks him.
Terrible.
I just love the like very conceited rich guy conversations that we get bits of here, and the just like complete remove, but like sense of just complete sense of authority that they try to project about it too. But eventually Kendall sits down and he and Matsson negotiate a little bit more, although this discussion is a lot more hostile. Matsson calls ATN a bad brand. He says that the siblings are a tribute band. I thought this was the only time that Kendall got any good word in, though, when Matsson says, "I'm just trying to make you rich," and Kendall says, "I'm already rich." Other than that, it was Matsson running circles around him.
Easily. But even that one, that's a defense, right? That's not an offensive move. That's just a good block. I respect a good block. I want to see some buckets. No buckets were made.
Yeah, I mean, the person who was closest to scoring ended up being, I think, Shiv here, because eventually Kendall breaks off with Roman and convinces him to try and tank the deal, but Shiv tries to get a bit closer to Matsson. He tells her that he's been freezing liters of his blood into bricks and sending them to Ebba, the female head of communication for his company, which, you know, like, good one, bro. Funny joke.
Do you think he's lying?
I don't think he's lying. He seems like too... That seems like too on brand for how they're trying to portray him as this weird eccentric. Into, honestly, like, power alpha moves.
Yeah, there was every time this man's on screen for anything, he's got this meta-ness to him where, if you remember his role in Atlanta, did he not play himself?
Yeah.
right? And what was he there?
As
Some crazy rich actor who was like, he had like Secret Services coming in and out of his room in Atlanta. Now he's doing
yeah.
blood, considering that he's been in True Blood. There was a joke earlier on about how the Swedes are so full of themselves they think they came from Vikings. My man just played the Northman. This man does a really great job of playing this hyped up version of himself to the point that I just always laugh at what his IMDb profile picture is. He does not care. And I think every time he appears in a role, he's just so unhinged. And he just knows how to play like a version of himself while making fun of it. And that's what makes him like, I don't know, that much more menacing. So I thought he was
Yeah.
owning every scene he was in.
Skarsgård's had a few appearances on the show by now, but this I think was his best episode to date, and he like really
Easily.
gets to show off all of his features because he is like so incredibly charming as like an actor, but also has this like wickedness to him, and like he's so intimidating at the same time. Like it's the guy who was in the Northman, right? Like
Yeah.
part part of you thinks
Being
he's
able to
really
do
cool, but part
business.
of you's worried he can like rip your throat out.
Exactly. So if you can't beat him through words, you're definitely not beating him on the physical side of it. So you're just screwed completely. I love the one where he walks up to him and he says, what are you waiting for? And he goes, well, I'm waiting for you to make a counter offer. And everyone just like looks down. We're just waiting on you, bro. The way he just
Hmm.
throws him back at it, he just embarrasses him. So that's why, yeah,
Yeah,
they just got dominated.
yeah. Uh, Matsson, I thought it was notable that Shiv, when he gives Matsson advice, also recommends Carolina and Jerry, which will come back a little bit later. But Matsson says that he likes Shiv, that she can take a joke like her dad. So I think both you and Matsson agree that Shiv has a lot of her father in her.
I've been saying, and if anything, she was the one who was able to close out a deal that helped him a little bit more because she'd also be helping him with another scenario that he has that he vented about. Considering that Carolina already has Eva wrapped up with that first comment, but if she's also going to be the one who's going to help him out, that's also a reason why she makes it off the kill list. So yeah, I thought it was an MVP performance for her. Her looking out also for Carolina and for Jerry, I thought was dope. So I'd be very interested to see where they take that on the next level because they did it dirty from the beginning. We talked about this last week. This duo of CE bros pretending that they're going to have their sister in on it, yet right from the beginning, what happens? In the opening scene when they're going to have a meeting. You have one
Uh,
brother not wanting to start until they have Shiv, and then you get this really quick glance from the camera of Kendall just going like, "Do we really have to wait?" By the time she makes it into the room, they're done. So she already
yeah.
knows where her priority lies.
Plus, Kendall cuts her out of this plan to tank the deal. And, the whole reason that they're doing this deal is so that they can go move on to their next venture as a team. So Kendall is trying to prolong the situation where she's not an equal with them, that she is on the outside
Yeah.
looking in. There's that line like, you think Pinky can dance or whatever, and it's like clearly Kendall is trying to you know, hold on to whatever power he can at the expense of Shiv.
And his brother Roman. Last time, yeah, that's
Hmm.
how it was too. Because this is also the episode when they're on the plane where she calls him out. Hey, where are all these pieces coming from?
Hmm.
And he has Hugo, the one starting the pieces, just kind of deal with it. So now that
That was a
Hugo's
good
gone,
move.
what happens next though? Because now he has no loyalties.
Yeah, well, we'll see how soon that whole thing dissolves because Kendall uh, does not seem in a rush to sell.
Oh right,
Uh,
it's speculative. My bad. The list is just hypothetical.
yeah, exactly. Um, Kendall gets Greg to leak that the meetings are going poorly to the press. So I guess that's just Greg's new job now is to be liaison with journalists, but on the down low. Kendall also gets Jess, his assistant, to set up a screening of the rough cut of their 3-hour hibernating robot movie. What was it called again? Calispatron Hibernation. Art at $225 million budget with another $25 million in reshoots plus CGI costs. Do you think Calispatron Hibernation is this world's Transformers or this world's Mortal Engines?
Sheesh. This is probably a straight to ATN streaming movie, if anything. This is their Gray Man at that point.
What do you
I
think
completely
ATN
forgot that
streaming
was a
service
movie.
is called?
It, something dumb like ATN plus plus or something like that. ATN minus.
You don't think it's like
Yeah.
Logan Max, Roy
Ooh.
Plus?
Not after he wanted to tank his dad, probably not. But yes, something with a Roy. I do want to shout out Jess because that's been his assistant for the last couple of seasons, and
Yeah,
she's had a bunch of really good reaction shots. There's a moment
she's
when he does his
so
real
good.
strut into the office, and right before they take the elevator, he goes something. He says something about throwing in a Mickey into his drink before he wants to get there
Yeah.
early to throw in a Mickey, and she just gives this very nonchalant look as they go in. And honestly, it's been underrated. We haven't given her enough shout outs for that, but she did really good in this episode.
Yeah, she does incredible work sort of on the margins of this show, just being like maybe the only normal person in the room for a lot of this deranged ego boasting. So
Yeah,
yeah,
because
shouts
like
to her.
Carolina's already playing game. She's the only one who hasn't done anything on the offensive. She's just
Right.
kind of going along with it.
There's also an interesting moment where Shiv tries to kick dirt on Tom's white shoes, so he flicks her ear and says her earlobes are thick and
Ew.
chewy like barnacle meat. What did you make of that moment?
Uh,
Because it kind of seemed like Shiv was into it.
yes, at the end of it all, and especially with what we see at the end, it very much seems like she kind of got, I don't know, she was like attracted to that in some way. All I know is if somebody flicked my ear like that, nah, absolutely not. We think her brothers aren't there for her for the meetings. The moment she squealed, she yelled, and everyone was in the vicinity. You should have come back and knocked Tom out, dude. Where's Greg when you need him? Greg's got like a couple inches on Tom.
Right?
Yeah, you
Half a
should have
foot
whack a
at
moled him.
least.
That's insane, right? Talking about the quad, but doesn't come back to actually protect someone in the quad. Nah,
Right.
that's hands. That's hands.
What happened to the
Easily.
quad squad?
Mm-mm.
So right as the C Bros are about to talk to Matsson, Roman gets that text with a picture of his father in the morgue, which starts his emotional tailspin. But then Matsson he asks when they're on top of the mountain together, "Are you Scooby Dooing me? Did you go to Hanna Barbera Business School?" Uh, he says that their father would be embarrassed by his kids now, and then he goes off to like take a piss trying to do some weird like epic alpha move or whatever in this you know very like macho business guy thing that Matsson's pulling. But by this point, Roman and Kendall are kind of sick of their shit. They've decided to tank the deal, and Roman finally snaps here. He calls Matsson an inhuman fucking dogman for insisting that they come all that way so soon after their father's death. Uh, and I thought it was just like an incredible moment for Kieran Culkin. That whole bit saying he hates him, that they'll never sell to him, and that if he tells the board, he'll say it's all a negotiation tactic. Um, we've talked before about how I kind of feel like this is going to be Kieran Culkin's Emmy year, and he's putting in really great work in this scene. But did you take this moment to be Roman losing it, or a bit of the old Logan Roy negotiating through some insults?
I saw it more as him losing it. This is the
Yeah,
closest that he would be to pulling his dad, but he is the nicest of the siblings. So when it comes off like him, it's like a little dog barking at you, and I think that's why what's his name didn't take him seriously. I think it's still the conversation with Shiv that saved it for him over him being
mm-hmm.
yelled by Roman. I think he loses it. I know in the after the discussion he said he was so into it that he didn't even realize everything that was around him.
Yeah,
So to me that showcases that he snaps at that moment because he's he made sure that he addressed that performance with him being like so embroiled about all the disses that he was giving his father that again just like the decisions he was making they're all done on an emotional side not really on a business side.
yeah. I mean, while I think it sort of has shades of that tactic, like you can feel his voice breaking in that moment too, which again speaks to how good Kieran is in that scene. But like the way he says "you piece of shit" while walking away, that's not like a person who's like very confident in his position. He's been hurt. Like
Yep.
he took his words very personally.
It also
And
wasn't part of the plan, right?
exactly.
Like that's what showcases. Like, no, there was two people who went in there. Every time Kendall does this, we go, nah, that's wrong of Kendall. This time he did it. He wasn't supposed to say anything, and that's why he says something to the effect of like, and if you say I said anything, I'm just gonna deny it. And Kendall just has to stare at him because he realizes his brother just kind of blew up. Kendall kind of agrees with what he's saying. He's like, yeah, do it for Dad's honor, but at the
Hmm.
same time, like, yeah, we were gonna kind of toy him, and he decided to just blow it there. Again, I like the performance, great performance, but damn, if Shiv wasn't there in the background fixing things, I don't know if they would have had the same result.
This news just broke actually right before we started recording this. They're
Right now.
moving Kieran Culkin into the lead actor category for drama at the Emmys. So Culkin gonna be
Wow.
going up against Jeremy Strong potentially. What do you think of that
Damn.
potential matchup when it comes to Emmys time?
I like that they waited until this specific episode to release it. That's
Yeah,
when they
right.
thought. Not the last three. This one. Okay.
I mean, I love Jeremy Strong and I love Jeremy Strong on this show, but if we're just talking about season 4, it's Kieran. It's Kieran's
Jer-
season so far.
yeah. Jeremy's got one. Tom's got one. Two missing is Roman and Shiv.
Yeah. So then back on the jet, uh, Frank gets a call, and Matsson comes in with the with the can't say no offer of $192 per share, which is $5 over the stock price. Basically, an offer so good it would be illegal to turn it down. So the tactic of tanking the deal not going as well as the CE Bros hoped it would. They look pretty miserable on the plane. But meanwhile, Shiv is texting with Matsson, and Matsson asks for a picture of her brothers to see the look of defeat on their faces. Shiv, who's now got this inside line to Matsson, sends him the picture. She also pulls Tom aside and tells him that they're going to fire Sid, the current head of ATN, potentially leaving an important job open for Tom. So, as we were talking about earlier, it's a bit of an inversion. Shiv is now looking like most powerful of the Roy siblings, and the CE Bros
Yeah.
not so happy with their current position.
That's it. I like that twist because at the end of it, the two people who are in charge that were supposed to give her something won't, but the person in charge of those two bozos does have it in. Yeah.
Yep,
So
yep.
embarrassing. I will say one thing for Tom. They had a very nice moment at the beginning. Uh, I guess nice is a bad way to put it. When they're on the plane, and I forget if he stares at Frank or if he stares at Hugo, maybe the other guy right here.
Yeah.
It like a quick reminder of the last time they were on the jet, what happened, and they just like brush it off really quickly and continue on the flight. I thought that was a nice little touch.
Yeah. Finally, the thing that's been hanging over the heads of all the suits for this episode, the kill list, comes through, and we find out that everybody is every one of the suits is not being retained except for Carolina, Jerry, and Tom, the three that Shiv has been looking out for. So again, this is a big stock up moment for Shiv Roy. Uh, Going to stock up, stock down. Who do you think had the biggest gain in this episode? Was it Shiv? Was it Tom, who now seems to be kind of back in Shiv's good graces and potentially the new head of ATN? Was it Jerry or Carolina for being retained through all of this mess?
I think if I give it to Shiv, it trickles down to Jerry and Carolina. So I thought those three gave the best performances just overall, easily.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean that whole just like collective under Shiv, but Shiv is kind of spearheading it. I think her stock's
But
definitely
without
up. I'd
Carolina's
also
diss, what's his name doesn't inquire about her without going like, "Hey, I noticed how the one person who I have, your one person that you have, was able to turn her down. Had that girl
right.
moving her scarf. It was getting a little hot in there. Yeah, she wasn't even in the sauna. So I think Carolina still put up something. She still saw Jerry put up something.
Hmm.
So yeah, I'll still give it to Shiv, but I think that
Yeah.
Jerry and Carolina definitely had MVP performances in it too.
Yeah. I'd give it to Shiv too, but you gotta throw some love to Matsson because he was unflappable this episode, and he came in saying he wanted the whole thing. He didn't want the carve out for ATN, and looks like he's going to get it, despite the CE Bros trying to tank that deal.
At that much money, though, he's the best opposition they've had. I can't think of anybody else who's been
Yeah.
better than Matsson.
I thought it was very interesting in the behind the scenes interviews that played after the episode that Jeremy Strong was talking about how, because they lost their adversary in Brian Cox's performance of Logan Roy, there's sort of like a vacuum there. And it was nice to have uh, Alexander Skarsgård's character, Matsson, to be the new adversary for them to sort of be opposite of. And I don't know if
Yeah.
that's sort of their way of hinting that Matsson is kind of going to be the main adversary for the rest of this season or the show.
I don't see how it's not. Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, they've chosen somebody really interesting at least to center it around.
Yeah, because they had the tussle with Pierce before they made the deal. They kind of had that little conflict going on. They had the guy who was also running for president who went at them with the ship cruise, the cruise allegations. I always forget
Yeah.
his name. But this has been the best one. But nothing's going to beat the number one adversary that they have. That's themselves every single
Yeah.
time. Stock down
time.
on Roman, who blew his stuff. Kendall, who it's just look. I just don't see a good future for him because I don't think he's going down the right path. But Hugo had the worst one. This man needs the help of Kendall because he's already had the violations that his daughter did. He's already been put to the side. He is the one who started the rumors on Logan to begin with. So if anything, I think that's a route that's not going to help them because people are going to think that that the brand's been a lie to begin with. Hugo had it the worst. Didn't even finish his plate.
Yeah, didn't even really get to have enough of that Scandinavian brunch. I'd also throw a stock down on Greg because he's been reduced to messenger boy to journalists, and he gets barely half a sentence in to his conversation with Matsson before Matsson like points him out for the nepo baby he is.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he seemed like he might squirrel his way into some power, but I'm feeling less confident about that after this one.
But he is, Zach. What's
He's still
even
there.
doing
He's in Norway.
Sweden? Exactly. Anytime he opens his mouth, just the idea of him being able to do so is a win for him.
Yeah.
I'm surprised he's breathing. I'm surprised he's functioning. He's like a rat. He's the cockroach
Yeah.
in the show.
Exactly. You can't get rid of him. Do you have any favorite quotes from this episode? We haven't mentioned yet when they arrived to Norway. I liked Shiv's line, "Which way to Chairman Matsson's re-education camp?"
Tribute band. I think it's been one of the best insults that the show's given.
It's very good, very fitting. Hugo, as I said, had a lot of bangers between the Sochi line and the CE Bros. But yeah, Matsson, the tribute band is definitely the most devastating one. All right, so looking forward to the rest of the show. As we mentioned, we're now halfway through this final season of Succession. 5 more episodes to go. Gonna hopefully or potentially stay stateside and maybe into the election that's sort of been looming over the season of Succession. You know, we have heard a lot about Jared Mencken. There was another reference to that character this week when Shiv said that apparently the Mencken campaign has an inside line to ATN, which, you know, not exactly ethical there.
I know it's not for sure. It's
right.
Not new.
Yeah, Roman was not exactly surprised at that revelation.
She was like, "Do you know we do this?" And I'm like, "I think that's what made your company." Yeah.
Yeah. I wonder though, because like they were talking about this funeral that still hasn't happened for him. Are we going to get that on the next episode? Is it going to be a little bit more election focused? Where do you feel like we're headed, at least in the immediate future, on Succession? Or where do you maybe want to be headed?
I think we are going to get a funeral scene because when we were talking about the articles coming out about how they approached it and having the codename of Larry David, they also mentioned him being there on the day where they filmed the funeral. So it sounds like a funeral has been filmed. I wonder how that's going to come into play for Matsson, who already has been toying them using this death. That's what caused the eruption scene from Roman. So I think it's going to be a crazy setting because we've done weddings, we've done meetings, we've done planes, we've done islands. But have we done a funeral?
Yeah, not yet
That'd
on
be a
Succession.
crazy setting. So yeah, I'm curious that one.
It's also feels like they're potentially setting Kendall up for another fall from grace because he got so high on his own supply over the past like episode or episode and a half maybe that like to have this all slip through his fingers while processing his father's death. I could
Yeah,
see this episode being another kind of like too much birthday sad Kendall kind of moment.
he's gonna mess up. That's the one thing you might
That's the one
guarantee
thing we
with
know.
Kendall. Yeah,
Yeah.
but you will have some good needle drops.
Exactly. Yeah. I'm looking forward to another Jay Z or LCD sound system drop at some point on this episode. All right. So I think that's about all for this recap of Succession, episode 405, The Kill List on Intercut Explains. Unless you had anything else you wanted to add?
Just give me more Matsson for the future.
Yeah. Exactly. If you need to replace Brian Cox, doing it with Alexander Skarsgård isn't exactly the worst deal.
Not at all.
All right, so we'll be back next week with more recaps of Succession, but that's all for this podcast. You can catch more from me, Zach Shevich, by following me on Twitter, Instagram, or Letterboxd at ZShevich, that's ZSHEV as in Valter. That was another good dig that Matsson got in, by the way, this
That
week.
one took me a minute. Yeah, big swing.
Yeah,
Big swing.
calling him out on the Valter one. SHEVICH, and check out my YouTube or TikTok channels at Multiplex Show. Arturo, where can people find more from you?
You can find me over at LME Explain on Letterbox, on Twitter, on YouTube, or every week here where we invest in some Royco stock on Intercut Pod.
You can listen to every episode of the Intercut podcast on iTunes, Anchor, Spotify, Podcast Addict, whatever your favorite podcatcher is. I like Overcast, and then make sure you're subscribed not just to the audio version, but to the video feed as well on youtube.com/intercutpod. Catch our bright smiling faces as we break down the latest in entertainment. Find new episodes of the Intercut Weekend Must-Watch streaming on our YouTube channels every Monday. And please leave us a comment, like the video. Consider heading over to iTunes to give us that much requested 5-star review. You know, shout out to Norway. We are number 2 or 4 on the Norway podcast film review charts. That's pretty dope. Yeah, hopefully they
You ever been?
Never been, but I'm down to go now. I mean, it looked beautiful.
After seeing Succession, I want those rooms. It was a little tiny, but I'm not complaining if that's the view.
Exactly.
Just pure window corner. So I'm there. Shout out Norway. Thank you.
Yeah. Like our Facebook, Instagram, Twitter pages, support our Patreon. You can find all of those at Intercut Pod, and you can also find a link to our Discord in the description down below. Those are the best places to get updates throughout the week from me, from Art, from all the guests that we feature here on Intercut. Thanks again for tuning in, and until next time, it's time for sauna, 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 sauna.